My man, JG.
What's going on, brother?
Jonathan Galloway, Mr. Galloway.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. How's everything going?
It's good. Welcome to the show, man. As we were just talking off air, I'm excited to have you on. Long time overdue.
Absolutely.
Mr. Podcast himself. I don't know if that's a nickname you've ever had, but
yeah, I have been called Mr. Podcast. Maybe not in the best way. It's been like, go sit over there, Mr. Podcast. It's like, all right, I'll go over here.
Interesting. Naturally, I'm going to ask you to introduce yourself, but I kind of want to ask about that.
I was with a group of friends and they were having a discussion about something. And, I kind of walked into the conversation and I can't remember the nature of the conversation, but I just remember I kind of snickered, and then a girl was like, "Go sit over there, Mr. Podcast," and it was just like I remember that moment forever. I have no idea what the conversation was about, but I know that I don't think I was supposed to be laughing, and I remember laughing. So, but that's that we've had conversations about just being outside and being my many nicknames, so. Yeah.
It's always an interesting circumstance when you're in the middle of a conversation where you shouldn't be laughing because it probably shouldn't be funny.
Yeah.
And you can't help yourself.
Yeah. I mean, it's sometimes like, like people had shots. It's like, hey, like I'm a little bit more giggly. Like, so excuse me.
Oh my goodness. There's another very specific question about that I want to ask you. But before we get too far down on tangents and conversations and whatnot, for the listeners who are unfamiliar with Mr. Podcast, which we're going to help you reclaim that name, by the way.
Okay.
Use it in the best of ways. Kind of introduce yourself. Tell the listeners who you are. And
absolutely. Jonathan, JG Galloway, Educator, podcast pioneer. I run a podcast network and studio, Audio Wave Network, here in Detroit. I've told myself and many other people that, I kind of pushed the culture for it when it came to podcasting out of the city of Detroit. So I wear that humbly and honorably. I've been in education for 6 years, transitioned out of the classroom most recently. So now I'm a alumni director. Great times. Tired times, but we're working. Father, husband, I can't forget those titles too.
Hi there, Coach Alex here from A-Team Fitness. Thanks for listening as I share incredible transformation stories directly from the source themselves, the individuals doing the work and seeing the results. We'll take a behind-the-curtain peek at the mental and physical changes that make for amazing transformation. I'm glad you're here. And after the episode, I hope you feel empowered to begin making some transformative changes of your own. Let's dive in.
You wear so many different hats.
Oh, yeah.
One thing that stuck out to me about that is you use the term educator initially instead of teacher. And I found that really interesting and really cool because educator seems to encompass much more. I know teacher has a lot of connotations, both good and bad, but educator seems just more meaningful as a descriptor.
To be honest, when I switched out of the classroom, I kind of stopped saying teacher because of being a teacher. You're really in the trenches. Like you're really, I don't like to use the classroom as the trenches, but you're really in it. Like you're really in the space, and it's really all due credit to teachers and me as a former teacher, the credit you put in to be in the classroom. But as an educator, I look at it as like someone who's involved with the educational processes and still in the like classrooms, every blue moon. But for the most part, like there's days where I may not talk to a student or, it's just I'm doing back end work for the students. And it's just like I don't have much interaction. So, yeah, that's why I use the term now educator instead of, teacher.
It stuck out to me because I think I'm going to use the term label, although I mean it, I think in a different context and not a negative one. When we like with labels in particular, I think it's very important to choose them selectively and purposefully, right? So like for me in the same boat, I stopped calling myself a personal trainer after 2 years in the industry because it felt like it didn't encompass enough of what I was trying to accomplish and what I was trying to do. And it came with its own connotations. You know, if someone meets me, I tell that, you know, and they hear that I'm a personal trainer, they get a very clear picture of who they think that I am.
Already, they create their own. Yeah. So, and that's part of it. So it was when I was saying, even though I was out of the classroom, I would say like, yeah, I'm a teacher. And it's, what do you teach? It's like, oh, well, I'm not a teacher. Like, because I don't teach anything. I work in school buildings, but I don't work specifically with the subject. So it's just like, no, like, I mean, I used to teach, but now I'm this position. So
yeah. And I can also appreciate having to explain what you do
every time.
The term doesn't do enough. You know, I refer to myself as a fitness coach, which people will initially go to personal trainer, and then I got to kind of reel them back into having the full picture of what it is that I do in terms of the conversations and the lifestyle factors and the mindset stuff and all of the behind the scenes. Like
it's more than just the body. Like, I think what you do is more than just, it doesn't, just the body and working out just doesn't fit everything. You know what I'm saying? So yeah.
Absolutely. It also reminds me of a story. So I bagged groceries when I was in high school, first job I ever had. Mm-hmm. And I remember being embarrassed to tell people that I bagged groceries, even though I was one of the only students that had a job, right? Like I had my own money.
Yeah. Like we had the worst jobs when we were kids. Like that's when you're supposed to, like, I was never embarrassed. Well, I had a pretty good job. So
I think, you know, part of it may have stemmed growing up in Ann Arbor. There's definitely a wide spectrum of socioeconomic status. Mm-hmm. So there are people coming from families that don't have a lot of money, and there's people coming from families who have like boo-boo bucks, like mm-hmm. a lot of money. Not as bad as some of the towns next to us, but we still get a little bit of it. And so there were some kids who were very well off, didn't have to work, drove nice cars. Mm. And fortunately, you know, I'd place myself kind of in the middle of that spectrum. Like we certainly weren't well off, but we certainly didn't have the same concerns and challenges that a lot of other people had. And absolutely very fortunate for that. But nevertheless, having this job bagging grocery very early on, this was kind of my first foray into changing the labels of how we perceive ourselves, is I would tell people that I worked in grocery logistics.
True. I mean, I can't be mad at it.
And I remember people thought I was crazy for using it. They're like, what does that even mean? Especially my classmates, that nobody knew what logistics meant when you're 15 years old.
It's something that's easy. It just sounds fancy when you're 15, 16. It's like,
yeah.
Oh, like,
but it came with a sense of empowerment because it felt like I felt cooler working in grocery logistics than I was a bag boy or whatever it was, you know?
You know, that's one thing I would say about like first jobs is just, it really, I'm not saying being a grocery store, like logistics, like, but it shapes who you are kind of like those first job experiences. Those are little gems that you take like, oh, I remember this happened here or whatever the case may be. Like you probably bag groceries better than anyone at self-checkout. Like you're, okay, this goes here, this goes here. You know, my first job was Radio Shack. So you know, buying podcast equipment and things like that, I didn't know, you know, that, hey, I'm going to work at Radio Shack. And then years later, I'm going to be shopping for podcast studio equipment and, you know, going back to can't go back to Radio Shack, but you know what I'm saying? Like it gave me a sense of like, I know a little bit, like I know where I'm headed at least.
Yeah. And that's important. You're right. The first couple jobs I had when I was younger, I hated all of them. And I think that was the most important thing because then it made me realize early before I had too much skin in the game, what it was like to work a job that I hated. And I didn't want to do that forever.
You know, it's crazy. I actually loved every job I've hated one job I've ever had. Really? And I was like, yeah, that was the reason why I hated it is because there were no people there. Like it was probably 4 employees and we all sat like super far. So it was just like lonely. Like it was just like, I'm a talker, a people person. Like if I have a great co-working team, we can figure it out. Like, but it's just like, if I'm by myself, it's just like, I hate it here. Like need friends. Like, what are we doing here, guys?
I mean, there were definitely positive aspects of each job for sure. Like the friends you made and goofing off and stuff like that. Like I remember another random story about bagging groceries. One of our tasks was bringing the carts in from the parking lot. And so we would have these hooks. They were metal hooks on this big.
I know exactly what you're talking about. I see them all the time.
Yeah. So we would hook the front, big line. And one of the things we used to do for fun, because at the end of the night, if you worked the closing shift, it was at basically a strip mall complex in town here in Ann Arbor. And we would have to walk around the entire complex because sometimes people would take the carts to the bus stop or to other stores or whatever. So we'd have to do that. And that was our favorite part of the night because we got to just mess around while we're walking around this shopping plaza. But we would take two of these hooks, we'd hook them together and we would pull it until it was tight and we would swing it like a double Dutch rope. And the goal, because when the metal hooks hit the ground, you could make sparks. And our goal was to see how many times we could make sparks with the hooks.
No, those are the things that you see kids doing. You be like, what are they doing? Like, why are they doing it? But it's like, nah, I would have did it too if I was a kid. Like, like it's just like, what are they? I get it. They're kids.
As I tell this story too, it dawns on me that is a perfect example of pre-smartphone era.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Because I don't think I got my first smartphone until I was 21. And so I had to have been 15, 16 at this time. So this was how we entertained ourselves. We didn't have nothing to do.
No, and that's, to be honest, that's really how we had a different level of fun compared to like the students I teach now. It's just like, nah, like we didn't record things. It's like, no, like we had to live off memories, like just tell the stories on, hey, you remember this happened? Or you may have a digital camera picture to be like, hey, remember this night? And then it's just like, oh yeah, I remember this night. So times have changed. We're the older crowd now.
It's true. It's hard to admit it, but it's true. JG, tell me, let's talk about the podcasting a little bit. I know that's a big part of your identity too. And that's how I first learned of your existence, essentially, was Brian Cooper, comedian Coop City, giving him a shout out.
Oh, yeah.
You had interviewed him on one of your podcasts.
Yeah.
Right before that interview, he was in town. By this point, him and I had been working together maybe a full year. And we arranged where I was going to drive out to him. We met up for a drink right beforehand. That was my first time meeting him in person. And which you and I have not met in person yet.
We haven't. You know, it's crazy. I pay attention. I pay attention a lot. Like I see when someone tags someone, who is this person? Like, okay, oh, this is a trainer. He's a virtual trainer. Oh, like click follow, just because I know he's like when I seen you guys, like, I don't know if I asked Coop a question about his training on the podcast, but it piqued my interest so much. I'm like, virtual training, like, how does this, like, it was everything that was like just a curiosity, the journalist approaching me. And it was just like, I need to know who this guy is. Like, I need to know he's training Coop. Like, all right, so he's a trainer. Like, me and Coop always joke, but it's just like, all right, you're famous, I'm famous, we're famous. Like, we're going to be super famous. And hey, all right, cool. But I was like, Alex is a trainer of the stars. So it's just like, I need to know who he is and get close to him. So that was part of it. And then just like, just my journey in podcasting actually is interesting. Like, it's interesting to say the least. And I'll condense the story as much as possible. So I was 2014, I got sick. Like, I got sick and I was like in the house for a while. Like, I had surgery and I was just like in the house with nothing to really do. Like, I was just TV showed out. Like, it was just like, all right, there's only so many episodes of Game of Thrones that I could binge. Like, this was on, I think they may have been only on season 3. So it's just like, all right, that was 30 hours done. Like, what's next? So, as I keep, going, I find podcasting. My wife was like, hey, try this, listen to this, see if it piques your interest. So it's like 2014 and then I'm listening. I'm like, oh, this is cool. Like, this is like, it sounds like people just talking with their friends and just having a great time. So I asked a buddy of mine, he came over we were like playing video games, and instead of like having like music playing, I have a podcast playing. He's like, "What is this? What you listening to?" He's like, "Is this the radio?" I was like, "No, it's a podcast." He's like, "What's a podcast?" I go into explaining it the best way I can, which I still use this explanation today when I talk to older people. It's basically on-demand radio without commercials. And they're like, "Oh, that makes sense." So I explained it to him that way. And then he was just like, "We should do this." And I was like, "We should." And then like, fast forward, we started, at first we started with a YouTube channel where we were recording videos reviewing Game of Thrones and Walking Dead. So that was my first podcast like experience. It was like this review show on shows that I wasn't really too interested in watching in the first place. So it's just like, I'm giving this like really brash like opinion on these shows. Like, why didn't they just shoot Walking Dead? I'm just like, this doesn't make sense. Like, take everything and just leave. Like, so I'm giving these opinions, and it's funny. But it's like, I know where I fit. So I know how to add comedic value or to make the moment serious, and just like to narrate a story kind of like for the audience. So at the end of these episodes, I used to always say like, our podcast is going to be coming soon. Like, an actual podcast is coming soon. And then one day we didn't have any mics. We had a camera and we put the lens over the camera to like lower the quality of the video. So it wouldn't be such a large file. And we released this black video on YouTube, and you just hear our first podcast. So that was my podcast start. Very, very interesting beginnings.
Yeah. But now it's expanded because now you're running a podcast network.
Yes. So it's the network. I'm like I said, I'm really observant and a student of watching people. Like, okay, like, I see what you're doing. I see what you're doing. I can do that. So, listen to podcasts, and they started running ads, and it was just like, all right, how do you do that? And then it's just like, let me figure it out and kind of put something together. So I sent some emails out to say like, hey, I have this podcast. We're interested in advertising for your product. This is our following. I can do it for product. If you're interested, you don't have to pay me. You just give me free product, and we call it a day. Well, that actually worked very, very well. So we were getting boxes and shipments of just like basically, I think we were some of the first like influencers, like podcast influencers, because I wasn't doing anything for money. It was all product. So they're sending me these boxes or dropping off cases. I just posted recently on my story, Uptime energy drink. Great relationship with them. Like, they'll drop me off cases of Uptime energy almost whenever. So that guerrilla kind of marketing like led me to like, okay, if I can do this for us, I can do this for everybody. But we got our first check, and it was just like, hey, like, I want to get paid for this. So every listener we get, give me 10 cents per download. Something small. And we weren't like popping out episodes to where it was like we were getting thousands of downloads. It was like around 200, 300 an episode, which was pretty good, coming like maybe our third month in podcasting, where I think we just got our first set of equipment. So this is still early. So our first check, I remember, was $2.34, like our first podcast check ever. And I was just like, oh, okay, like, now I can see where this can be lucrative. Or not, to be honest, I never looked at it as being lucrative. It was just, I can do this for everybody else. Like, everybody else can get a small check to do a podcast or an endorsement deal for something they like, and they'll be okay. So that's what the plan was. And a lot of people, there wasn't really any like known podcast studios or spaces in the city yet. So it was just like, I got you. Don't worry about it. So Audio Wave Network was birthed from there. And then it was just like, okay, now I have shows. Now how do I coach people into wanting to do podcasts and telling their stories and how to do it where they feel comfortable and, their audience feels comfortable. So that's where we're at now, 5 years later.
That's an incredible story. As you're telling that story, I was battling in my head whether because I want to take a step back for a second to when
absolutely.
When we were talking about Coop, your interview with Coop on the show, kind of seeing him tag me and going, and because I think there's a valuable lesson in there for the listeners, which is a little bit of strategy on my part to ensure that he brought me up on that episode.
Yeah.
Because him and I were trying to figure out when we were going to meet. And I remember him telling me, I have these times open over the course of the weekend. And, the only thing I got going on, I think it was a Friday. He's like, on Friday, I got this podcast interview then, but I could do it before. On Saturday, I got this event, but I could do it before or after. Yeah. And I remember him saying he had the podcast. And I'm like, you know what? I need to see him before that podcast.
Have to listen. and that's crazy. Like, it's because I knew when to place the podcast too, because I want to be before everything else, because now it's like you will go to every event and like I had a dope experience yesterday at this, like, so it's all positioning and timing. Like everything is for a reason, So yeah, like that's actually incredible.
It's funny that you did the same thing. And I think that's just the best way to get people, from a business perspective, top of mind without it being pushy, right? Because him and I didn't ask about the podcast one time when I met him. We were having a conversation. I was learning about him. We just were kicking it, having a good time. But I knew when he went to that podcast, I would be fresh on his mind. And inevitably, some conversation would come up that would trigger him being like, oh, I just met my coach for the first time. He came out and had a drink with me.
No, that's placement for sure. Like it's you do that. Like I do that all the time where it's like, it's not so much of, it's just seizing the opportunity or seizing the moment. Like if someone says like, hey, I'm going to do a radio interview later on today, but yeah, we can definitely talk and chop it up. Yes, I want to talk to you before the radio interview. Like, because it makes the most sense. Like it makes the most sense on me talking to you before then, because now who knows? I may get a shameless plug. Like, and it's okay. Like,
there's a little bit of strategic thinking involved.
Absolutely.
Right? Absolutely. Which is interesting because I was listening to an interview that you did. I don't remember which one, but you were talking about podcasting. You were talking about audio wave network. And you had said, see if I can remember verbatim. You had said that the business side of things was a little bit more uncomfortable. It was a little bit more foreign to you, but put you in front of a microphone.
I'm here. And it's still true. I'm getting better. Like I would never say like I'm a business savant when it comes to, navigating this space. But if you tell me like, hey, I want to start a podcast and this is the idea I have, let's go. Like there's probably nobody better to assist you or to navigate that space with you, than me, because I'm going to tap into your audience. I'm going to figure out what your audience is. I'm going to help you structure the show. I'm going to help you produce the show, edit the show, promote the show. So it's just like, that's who I am. That's where, that's where I got my bread and butter. We were talking about nicknames, and earlier on in like podcasting, I had 2 nicknames, well 3 actually. It was all these music giants. So it was Joe Jackson. It was a podcast. They said like I was just so aggressive. I was hype. I was just always like, making sure they were on time and everything was right. So that was a funny one. The other one was Puff Daddy of Podcasting. They said I would dance my way through everyone's podcast. Like I'll hop in on anybody's podcast on the network. If I'm in the building, you'll probably hear me on the mic. So yeah, and that was really the only 2 that kind of stuck with me was those 2. But it's true. Like the business is getting better. Like I've been in spaces to where I'm learning how to navigate business, how to navigate not sponsorship dollars so much anymore, but like funding, like how to get funding, how to get paid to be a brand, or to be like, to get paid to be JG. Like, oh, you need JG the podcaster, so here I am. And that's an added layer where we talk about the many hats I wear. It's just like sometimes just a brand. Like I have to be the brand to like go teach kids to podcast or something, you know, and that's where it is.
By the way, screw the Mr. Podcast nickname. Puff Daddy of Podcast. That's the winner right there.
You said that's the one.
That's the one.
Yeah. It's a good time.
So how are you driving yourself to learn and get better at the business side of things?
To be honest, it's being around more podcasters. So I was recently at a podcast festival in Atlanta, Memorial Day weekend, and just seeing how they navigate. Like sometimes these spaces, I always say this, sometimes these spaces aren't for you to just learn, like to learn from like the sessions, but you learn from the people around the sessions. And that was really, really what I was taking in. When people were asking questions, I was like, wow, like, yeah, here's the answer to your question. But that question sparked another thing in me to like, oh, I'm creating this when I get home, you know? So those are the things that are helping me, you know, get better at podcasting, to be honest. So, and then also just trusting myself, trusting my abilities to do it. Like it was a lack of confidence mostly to say like, I don't know if I can be in this space, or I don't know if I feel comfortable being in the business side of things. And it's just like, nah, like it's okay. Like you got it. Like you just like you've entered every space where you weren't comfortable, like teaching, teaching was never even on my bingo board to say like, I'm going to be a teacher one day, like never. So that was a space where it's like, you've never done this before, but look at how you're navigating it.
Yeah. Network and trust in yourself are two really, really important things. And it makes me think of kind of, you're right, the value in those conferences or those networking events or whatever is not in the content, because you can get that online for a small price tag and consume it at your leisure. You don't have to travel for that anymore. Mm-hmm. But it really is the people that you're meeting, the connections you're making, and being open to those new experiences. And that's, how I met my other coach, Chris, who's on my team. How I met him was at one of those conferences. Like, cause he lives up in Edmonton, Canada. Like we never would have crossed paths if not for a conference I went to back in 2019. And I think a lot of people, admittedly myself included, it's easy to not do those types of events or go to those types of events, because it's a big commitment financially, time-wise, traveling, etc. But I do think there's a lot of value in exposing yourself to those different mindsets and the different experiences.
And I'm actually like, it surprises people, but I'm naturally like an introvert when it comes to these spaces. Like I'll just sit and watch and listen. Like it's rare that I'll say, I'll be out on the limb. It's like, hey, how you doing? I'm such like, nah, that's not really me. So it's just like, for the most part, I'm an observer, and then it's just like, I'll speak, like if there's a question or if I have a question, I'll speak. But as far as like, just like seeing a group of people and be like, hey guys, like that's not really my forte. But I'm also getting better at that too, of where it's just like, hey, you need to talk to more people to let them know who you are.
And so I'm curious, how do you personally make connections at these events, given that you're naturally introverted when you go to these spaces?
To be honest, I most of the time they may have heard something about me or and then they'll approach, and then it's just like, now I'm immersed in the conversation. Or I remember my first podcast conference, I can't remember the guy's name, but he was from Idaho, and he was like, hey man, you seem like you're just out of place right here. I'm just going to chill with you. I don't know anybody here. I'm such and such. I was like, oh, I'm JG. This is what I do. He's like, oh, bet. He's like, I'm rolling with you all weekend. So literally he was like, hey, take my number now. I'll let you know where I'm at. And it was just like we're great. Like we're great podcast friends. I would say we're great friends, but we're great podcast friends. So where it's like, I'll hit him up like, hey, you going to this podcast conference or you going to this one? And he'll be like, yeah, I'll be there. It's like, all right, I'll see you there, or I may not make it. So we have a great relationship when it comes to these conferences and festivals, because I know he's in the industry and he's gonna look out for me, or he's gonna, once I get there, it's like he'll lead the way. And it's just, he'll be like, oh, this is JG. He does this, this, and this. And it's like, all right, bet. I just need a front man. Like, just give me a front man and we're here. Like, but when I'm by myself, if I see, I'm good on picking out people that are like me. Like, hey, what's your name? Like, I'm JG. This is what I do. Like, this is your first conference. Like, I'm not trying to like mingle with like, oh, this is the must meet person of this event. It's like, all right, like, no, I want to meet the people who are here just like me, kind of, lost in it or not really good at networking. I want to talk to those people because I don't know, like, we just usually click. Like, those people are usually the people that, I get more out of, like, business wise or just like friendship wise. It's like I'll get something out of that relationship as opposed to like the headlining act of the podcasting festival.
Yeah, it definitely, you make a bigger splash. It's a more impactful interaction than somebody who's talking to everyone, because they're not going to remember you, right? It's not memorable in any way.
Exactly.
To touch on the point of kind of trusting yourself, because we're essentially all making it up as we go. It's an interesting perspective to think about, especially when it comes to mentoring or coaching in your case, other podcasters. In my case, whenever I talk to newer fitness coaches in the space, it's really interesting for me, and as I'm sure it is for you too. It's, I feel totally confident giving advice about structuring their coaching business and what to do and things to learn and skills to build from the moment you start to where I am in this industry now, right? Like, anything in between, I feel super confident about. It's all the stuff that I haven't yet done, naturally so, right? Where I'm like, I don't know if I'm the person to be talking about this, right? Like, and so hearing you talk about how the business side of things is kind of where you are, I'll say, most uncomfortable, regardless of what level of comfort you might actually have. It's interesting how you talk about it with some of the people that you mentor or the podcast that you produce, where up to the point that you've gotten when it comes to sponsorships and your experiences there, super confident talking about that. But it sounds like all of the stuff where you still want to take the network in the future is where it's like, okay, now I'm business side of that. Like, what's the next level is a little bit more.
Yeah. And the reason why I always speak on things that I'm not good at rather than things that I'm great at is because the person that I'm talking to may be like, hey, I can assist with that, or hey, let's go this way with it, or let's figure it out together and I can help you. Because that's essentially what the network was for. It was to build community. Because there's things that I'm terrible at. Like, social media is like the bane of my existence. Like, I can do it. It's just, I need guidance. So, there's always going to be like checking in the professionals of the podcast that I work with. It's like, hey, I'm a social media manager. It's like, are you? Like, okay, like, can you assist me in building this out so I can like navigate this space, on my own? And that's where, that's why I talk about the things that I'm not good at, because if I don't share, then no one will ever know. And it's just like, I'm hiding this dark secret that's like, I'm struggling. And it's just like, no, like, I want to be honest and open, because someone is going to hear and say, JG, I got you. I mean, don't worry about it. Like, this is what we're here for.
And that's such a powerful perspective, because you're right. Most people, myself included at one point or another, keep our insecurities and the things we're not good at under wraps. We don't want people to know that we don't have the skills or the knowledge in this area. And you're right, that cuts us off from getting the very insight or help that we may need to get us to the next level.
It's interesting. Before this, I knew nothing about editing audio. I knew nothing about really talking to talent about structuring a podcast. None of this, I knew none of it. Like, absolutely none of it. Like, and I'm on like maybe my 6th year of like still learning, but it's it's interesting. Like I had a contract deal with NPR to do a show. Like someone was recording their show in my studio, and it was something I did wrong. And I was just like, hey, I'm not a complete audio editor. Like I didn't go to school for this. Like I went to YouTube University. Like, so like if it's wrong, then show me how to fix it and it won't be wrong again. And it was just like, I think sometimes we have, especially I think men mostly have like that ego where it's like, I can't let this shield down. But it's just like more recently, my shield is on the ground. Like, cause I'm tracking in territory that I've never been here. Like I'm in a coding program, and it's just like, when I tell you it's the most humbling experience ever, it's just like, I'll think I'm doing something right for an hour and a half, 2 hours. And then I get to the end, it's like, hey, this whole thing was wrong. And it's just like, are you serious? Like, so I gotta go. So, but it's just like having the ability to ask for help or feeling confident in asking for help and those things is just like, I'm transparent now. Like I especially now that I'm in this age, like I'm 32, you know, I'll be 33 this year. And it's just like, I'm expecting my second kid this year. It's like all of these things is just like, I don't have time to like have the shield of my ego up anymore. Like, hey, if I don't know, I don't know, but I'll find out, especially when it comes to podcasting. Like, nah, I'm like, if I don't know, it's give me an hour and I'll be a professional in a minute. But that's just what it is. Like I'm less uptight now than I once was.
Yeah. And that ability to trust yourself is such an important thing for people to recognize, because everyone that you see in life is literally making it up as they go. Mm-hmm. Right. And that's why in the program, when I'm coaching people and in my newsletter that I send out every week with different mindset stuff and different topics that I talk about, the general theme across it all is empowering people to understand how they want to think about things, and not to tell them how they need to think about things, but to give them insights into, oh, does that make sense for me to think about things this way? Or should I think about it that way? Because since there's no playbook, telling someone what to do or how to think works in a very small number of circumstances until they achieve the thing, and then they have no direction thereafter. But I've always had the position that if you can teach people how they want to think about themselves, about their life, about what they want, and they can adopt these principles or these frameworks that help guide their decisions, that in a lot of ways, I think is what allows us to trust our decisions when we are in that unknown territory.
Absolutely. Right. Absolutely. It's, you know, for me, all of this is unknown. Like the podcast network has been, especially like with the pandemic, it's been tough. The month to month or daily operation, it's just like some days I don't know what's tomorrow going to look like. Like I don't, like schedule wise, yeah, it's 3 shows on the schedule tomorrow. But as far as like what my day to day looks like when it comes to this, it's getting better. I would say that because now I'm scheduling like think time. Like, you know, like before I was just moving like, all right, I got to do these shows. I got to do these edits. I got to send these out. That's it. Right. And it was no, all right, when do you have time to like think, talk and just like breathe, but creatively breathe. Like, all right, what's the new shows we're developing? What's the next concept we're having? What's the next event we're having? And these things like are leading me now to be like, okay, like now everything is just, I told someone the other day, like I'm moving very methodically, and it's almost scary to me because it's no emotion involved. It's just like, okay, like this is what we got to do. It's like that like I feel emotion like outside of this, but it's just like I'm moving with the intent. I'm moving with the intention, and not so much of, oh, this is going to take forever. Like what was me thing. It's like, no, like, let's get this done. Let's get this done. Get this done. And let's figure everything else out in the back end. You know, I like where I'm moving. I like how I'm moving. I would say that it's just, there's not enough time in the day, you know?
Yeah, I hear you. And that's the interesting thing about, you know, building a business is at some point, everyone learns, if they're in it long enough, that same experience of it kind of feels like, I wouldn't say the emotions go away, but we just have better control over the emotions and how they're expressed, right? Because This is hard. You have to be able to keep your emotions in check. Because I don't know about you, and still today, sometimes I wake up and business feels like a house of cards. Like it's doing well, but it's like any moment it could go away.
Like any moment, you know, like COVID was that moment for me, like where it was like, you know, operating at this peak of like we're like live shows, crushing it on the stage, you know, like about 23 podcasts weekly. Like everything was good. We're having events, sponsorships are coming in, COVID hits, and it's just like, wait, like this is a new form of this isn't a new form of podcasting, but everyone wasn't doing this. You know, everyone wasn't using, you know, Zoom or other virtual platforms to podcast on. And it's just like now it's like this is the norm. Like this is the norm for people. But for me, it was just like, nah, like we're in studio. We this is like I set this up. So now it's just like, how do you pivot? Like, how do you pivot to keep business successful? And then also, how do you pivot from those people who were podcasting weekly to now it's just like, I don't have a desire to podcast anymore. And it's just like, I understand. Like, I understand, because it's like you take 6 months off because of a pandemic, and it's just like you lose the luster, you know? So it's on me to like reinvent this space and help curate that space and help make people feel comfortable again to continue to be in it.
Yeah. And I think that's why what you talk about with the pandemic and podcasting and some of the people that you were producing for kind of got out of it and stopped being motivated to do it. That's why I think having a very clear purpose is so important. Because, and I'm sure this is true for you with the podcast network, when the pandemic hit for me and all the gyms closed down and the in-person side of my business was a wrap, like it was done and there was no telling what the future held, I had the most clarity and focus that I had ever had. I'm like, this is very clear to me now. I still have the mission I had before. How it's going to happen is going to be a little different because I don't have that aspect, although I was already doing online coaching at the time. And it was just like, people need what I'm offering now more than ever. So let's go. Like, this is game time, essentially. And did you have a similar experience where when the pandemic hit, it was very clear, like, I'm going to make this work and this is how it's going to, no?
Not at all. Not at all. I was very depressed.
Yeah.
So up until probably that, like, maybe like 2021, it just didn't feel right. Like it didn't feel right. It was like the number, like business like dwindled drastically because I always preach 3 things in podcasting: creativity, content, and consistency. Like those are the 3 C's that I always push in podcasting. And one of the, like, consistency is the biggest. So it was, I couldn't make the shift. Like it couldn't click, because also I had just came back from my first podcast conference ever in March of 2020. So I have all this information and all these things I want to share and do. And it's just like lights off, like no studio. So it's just like, it literally, like it dug me into a hole. Like I was just like, I don't want to talk about podcasting. I don't want to think about it. I don't want to, like, it was just like, I couldn't shift. Like I couldn't shift. And it took a while. Like, and I think to just be honest, I think I'm still shifting out of it, you know, like that kind of that woe is me that I was talking about earlier, where it was just like, I felt it. I felt this, like, you know, I couldn't, like, because also in that time, like I changed studio, like we had to change studios because they were selling our original building. So this place that I've called home for the past 4 or 5 years, it's like gone now. Like it's like, it doesn't feel right. So, but like to transition, it was just like nothing really felt the same. Like I'm really still trying to restore the feeling that I had, and like I still have super love for podcasting, and like those feelings like definitely like peak out when you know, I'm working with new clients and things like that. Sometimes it's just like I have to like, it's like a really great love relationship. Like it's a really great love relationship. Like where, you know, you go through like a rough patch, and it's just like, how do you make amends and how do you restore the feeling that you once had? And that's the things I'm working on. Like I'm working on those things now, like, because a lot of what podcasting is for me is community. Like it's about bringing people together. Like, so bringing people together and sharing those stories, and like, it's still hard. Like it's still hard to get people together and still share those stories, but you know, that's what we're working on. And it feels good to say, like, to speak on this, like, because it's, you know, it's like, I talk to like my team about it all the time. It's like, hey, like, I'm struggling. Like I'm struggling with my creativeness or like just putting things out. Reason why is because I'm also constantly adding to my plate. Like I'm a glutton for time consuming activities. That's like, I'm a glutton for that. So, you know, it's school, it's a new baby. It's like all of these things. It's like, they motivate me, but they motivate me to be a better podcaster. So it's like, I'm in school to make more money, to build the best podcast studio possible. I'm having a kid. Like I want them to have like all of these fruits of my labor. So it's rewarding. It's rewarding. It's a journey. It's a fight. It's everything. Like it's everything. And I love every aspect of it. Like, don't get me wrong. Like I love the ebbs and flows of my podcast relationship. Like my relationship with podcasting. It's truly a journey. Like it's truly a journey, but it's like rewarding at the end, because when I create great content, like, and the podcaster for the first time, they be like, this was so great. And it's just like, I'm happy you loved it. You know, like I just did a series of podcasts for a 5th grade class at a school. Like they were doing like national disasters. So they were all like super nervous. I came into their classroom. They're all super nervous. Like, tornadoes don't. And it's just like, it warmed my heart to like produce that content. And their parents get to hear it, and their parents are like emotional hearing their child on recording. So, you know, it ebbs and flows, but at the end of the day, it's like my other marriage, you know?
Yeah. I'm glad you shared that experience, because I think that's a more common experience during the pandemic than the one that I had.
Yeah,
it was very rare, and I feel, again, very fortunate.
But I think in your industry, like it was not easy, but it was a good transition to be like in the lifestyle game, because it's like, all right, people at home, they can't go work out. So it's just like, hey, you got me. Like, so I think like it was, but it's also, I think, a testament to you on just being able to navigate that space, because that's also a hard space to navigate. You got people coming on that are dealing with life, and it's just like, all right, like here we are. Like let's go.
It reminds me of our earlier conversation about timing. And I think that was a serendipitous moment of timing for me, which I've talked about on other episodes, which is I had already been doing online coaching for 2-3 years at this point. And so when the pandemic hit, every fitness coach went online, but most fitness coaches did it for the first time and were just starting to make the mistakes or to figure out what that looked like for them. Whereas I had already made all of those mistakes. So my program was established. It was up and running. It was a good program. And now it's a great program, but it was a good program. And I think the key to it too, as part of my program, as you have firsthand experience, is the level of communication that occurs.
Absolutely.
It's every day. And I think that people having to choose an online coach, because there were no gyms at the time, right? So it got rid of that barrier of comparing traditional coaching to online coaching. That was gone. People had generally more time on their hands because they had nothing to do. So they were going stir crazy. There were extra concerns about health, naturally, because of the pandemic. The healthier you are, the better chances of COVID not being serious. And people with craving connection.
Yeah.
And whether accidentally or obviously I couldn't have anticipated a pandemic, but my program encompassed all of those things?
Because it's you now have a new buddy. It's somebody that you're going to talk to probably every day or every other day almost. So it's in that sense of, it's a break from your norm. And that's what working out is. I mean, not so much of from the norm, but just I don't have to, when I'm working out, I don't have to, none of this stuff matters right now because it's I can't do anything. I've taken student calls on, the Peloton, or I've done that, but nah, I can't do it right now. I'm hooked into this bike. So it's I can't get up, or it's I'm in the middle of a set. I'm not going to stop to remedy. Now, let me clarify that. I will, but it's unless it's an emergency, which 9 times out of 10 is not, then I'm going to keep going. And that's because that's my place of solace. And I think now also what I've been doing is kind of taking my phone out of the equation. So it's all right, let's do not disturb, or let's figure it out, or just change the time I work out. So now it's either early morning or super late at night. And that way it's see, I knew you were taking notes. This is how it's all right, let me see how to navigate this. Hey, JG, I got this wonderful plan. So, but to that point of just taking a break, a mental break, vacation is a mental break for me. Just where it's just all right, I don't have to be on call or on demand at all times. I don't have to be JG. I can be just Jonathan Galloway, right, or dad or husband. Those are the roles that I can be.
And, I'm glad you bring this up because as we've been talking about podcaster, educator, husband, father, many other roles that you might hold, you are the prime example of someone who could easily write off the time investment into their health because of how much you have going on in your life. And so you kind of already dabbled on it a little bit just a moment ago, but I'm curious for you, what role and how important is investing in yourself and in your health allow you to show up the best that you can for all of those other hats that you wear?
To be honest, if I don't work out for an extended period of time, my body feels it. And right now, I'll be transparent. It's been about a week and a half just because of vacation and school and things like that. But I feel it. I feel it. I feel sluggish. I don't feel as bright, as wiry as I usually am. I may require coffee. It's times where I don't require, I can get up and go. And it's I'm just naturally with it, But it's a journey, I would say that it's definitely a journey. My fitness journey is unlike, well, it might be someone's out there, but a lot of times where people build their schedules around their workout, my workout has to fit in my schedule because I look at it like this, my schedule most times is something on my calendar. It's for pay. I'm getting paid from it. So it's I can't be hey, can we move this to this morning because I need to work out at 6? It's nah, I don't have that luxury. So it's we fit it in when we need to fit it in. But now what I've been doing is especially now that I'm home a lot more, that school is out. My job is year round, but I'm home a lot more. So it's just, if I know there's a 30-minute window, let's get a 30-minute workout in. Let's get, let's lift, let's do some squats, let's do something to where we're staying active and we're feeling good. Because one thing I would say is when I am actively working out, I feel like I have the glow, I have a glow about me. So a glow and a bounce where it's I don't really get tired. And it's these are things that I need in order to keep my schedule going. I need that extra energy where I don't need a midday nap, or it's I don't really feel sluggish. Now, the hard part of all of this is the eating. I'm a big component of never eating enough or wait, did I eat today? Like this, that's like, if you had to give me a slogan, it may be, did I eat today? Like, because sometimes it'll just be like on the go or on the move. Now I'm being more conscious about it, where it's like, all right, you're going to be in this place or in your car for X amount of time. It's just like, let's go grab something. And it'll be like these like healthy protein balls or just something where it's like, I'm going to get full, but I'm also going to be like, I'm going to have energy. I'm going to be going and I'm going to have snacks all day. So that's really how I've been doing it. And then also the second caveat to the food part is I have a pregnant wife. So sometimes we may have Taco Bell for dinner and it's just like, I'm sitting here like, this is not going to agree with me. This is not going to agree with me. This is not going to agree with me. But I've learned that you always really got to kind of I got to eat what she eats, or it's just like, so you just want to eat a salad in front of me. You trying to like, so I have to be like, okay, let's go with the light options and just, make it work. All in all, man, it's like, I think our time has shown me like, okay, like you have to, because I know that my body weight fluctuates, like I'll go a month straight working out, drop 30 pounds. And it's just like people wonder like, yo, how are you doing this? And it's just like, when I'm dedicated, we're here, we're there. Like I know that with my schedule and my lifestyle, like a fitness regimen is like, all right, like concentrate, like don't put it's always like I always say, like, don't put too much dip on your chip. Like don't put too much dip on your chip, like reel it in, like be mindful. But right now it's just like this week, like right now I know my days, Tuesdays, Thursdays, Fridays, and Sundays. Those are my workout days, because it's like I don't have class on Tuesday. Thursdays, usually I'm finishing my class. I can do it in the morning. Friday, easy Fridays. And then Sundays is just like, most of the time I'm at home, like relaxing on Sundays. So it's just like, let's get something in light, quick. And you know what I've been doing a lot lately? Yoga. Like just like stretching out and just like trying to, make sure I stay young and limber.
Like, by the way, Puff Daddy of Podcasting, Did I Eat Today is oddly inspirational. I'm just gonna say.
Listen, man, I can't wait till the days that I can afford a personal chef, because a personal chef is like, some people are like, oh, I want a housekeeper. It's like, no, like I need someone to cook. Like just cook all our meals. Like we're a pretty busy family, so it's just like, just cook our meals. We're good to go. Like that's it.
Let me ask you this totally random question. If you had to pick one, would you choose a personal chef or somebody to clean your house?
Personal chef all day, every day.
Yeah.
You know why? Because eating is half the battle. When you're dealing with like fitness and working out and you want to lose weight or you want to look better, if you can eat right, that's half the battle. Like if you telling me someone can prepare perfectly portioned meals on everything that I need, like, and now all I got to do is eat it. Oh, it's perfect. Like, so it's easy. Personal chef, like.
Fair enough.
And then it may be personal driver, like a chauffeur, like driver. And then it's just like, we're good to go after that.
I've thought about that actually. And for me personally, I don't think I would ever want a personal driver. And here's why. I get pretty bad motion sickness in cars. So if I have a driver, I don't actually think I'd be able to use that time productively, because if I'm looking at my phone or on my computer or something like that, I'm gonna feel terrible. Mm-hmm. And so for me, driving is really the only way that I can not get sick in a car. And I think it would just defeat the purpose for me.
Yeah, it would. Yeah, it would.
Because I wouldn't get any of that time back. I would just be sitting in a car with somebody else.
Like thinking like It actually works for me. Like I love like the Uber from the airport when I get to a city, because just now it's just like not paying attention. I don't know where I'm at. Like hopefully I'm not being kidnapped, but I'm just working. Like,
so that sounds safe. One thing that when you were talking about fitting fitness into your schedule that I loved you touching on was a lot of people when they get into fitness or when they're thinking about getting into fitness, trying to integrate fitness into their life, fall into this all or nothing mindset of they got to be all on or they're all off. And so the moment that their schedule gets hectic or they have to move a workout around or they have to shorten a workout, just do a couple of exercises, or just 30 minutes on the bike instead of an hour or whatever the case is. Oftentimes people will just do nothing at all because they can't do the full thing. So the thing that I love that you were talking about is your ability to understand that something is better than nothing. And so even if you got to break it up, even if you have to shorten it, even if you got to sneak it in between appointments when you can, even if you're distracted the whole time on your phone doing stuff for work, whatever the case may be, doing something.
You know, it's crazy. Whenever I feel like anxious or bored, like in my, and this is a luxury for me. Like I know everyone doesn't have like a little home gym set up at their house, but whenever I'm feeling like anxious or like I feel bored or something, I'll go bench press. Like, and it may only last, like, it may be like 3 sets of 10, but I'll take a break, maybe watch TV. Like I have a TV down there. Then it's just like, I'll just start watching sports. Or if I'm just watching a game, then I'll just go like lift weights or just do something, because it's like, especially when I'm home alone, like if I'm home alone and I'm not watching TV with my wife or talking to my kid, or we're not doing like family things, it's like, and I don't have really anything to do, I'll just go like something light and not scheduled on, you know, just something like, hey, let's stay active. Or like, I remember me and my wife were at home watching something, and it was like these super long commercial breaks. It may have been like Grey's Anatomy or something. Super long commercial breaks. So every time the commercial break would come, I would go downstairs, work out, like squats, just something where it's just like, I haven't worked out in a while. Let's get back acclimated to it. And it was just like, once I was starting that, then it was just like, all right, go for a ride tomorrow, or I'll ride my bike outside tomorrow. You know, certain things to where it's just like, I felt it, you know, I felt better. I felt the motion, and just like, if you do something, like my main goal, it was for like, I think it was March and April, because I was going to Vegas. So it's like, knew I was going to Vegas, wanted to make sure I was right, you know? So I was just like, do something every day. I don't care, like whatever it is, just do something every single day. And it was like, it could be like dumbbell press, it could be squats, it could be just do something every single day. And that's where like my mindset for July is like, do something every day. Like same thing, it's just like that do something every day challenge just sticks with me, whether or not it may not be, you know, a full 30 to 40 minute workout. It may just be 10 minutes of free weights, or 10 minutes of cardio, or, you know, like 10 minutes on, what's the thing I got? The boxing game I got with the VR set, the Oculus. So it's like, it may just be that. And that's cool. I think that's okay, because that's my journey. You know, that's my fitness journey.
Right. And it's so good. You know, something is always better than nothing.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Now I want to briefly touch on with regards to investing into your fitness, with regards to growing the podcast network, or whatever that journey will look like in the future, with regards to your own career. How does being a father influence and impact all of that?
And that's job number one. Everything stops. You know, being a dad literally is, it's the culmination of everything. You know, the amount of work I put in all of these aspects or fields is for my children. Like I want to have a successful podcast network for, you know, my kids to, like, maybe if it gets big enough that they can take it over, or it's just like something that they have a legacy of. I want to, you know, be successful in my career to provide, you know, the lifestyle that we have. Like my daughter has been around the world. You know, she wants to go to Paris next year. So it's just like, all right, like, let's figure it out. Let's go. You know, going to school to get this coding certificate. Like I want to be able to build a better lifestyle. So that's really, and then like fitness, you know, like being a Black man, especially in my 30s, like you, especially coming from like the hereditary diseases, like, you know, like I think diabetes is hereditary, or like high blood pressure. It's just like those things that are in my gene pool. It's just like we have to navigate these things so I can be around. So that looks like that's where fitness and lifestyle is completely, affected, and I have to make sure I'm making the right life choices to be around. So yeah, it's literally the epitome of everything.
And it's so, with kids and anyone that I work with that has kids, it's this interesting conundrum, right? Where kids, especially small children, eat so much time and require so much attention that it can be hard to find the spare time with everything else going on in life to invest in our health. But at the same time, they're also the biggest motivators to do so.
Absolutely. And this, I think I hear my child coming down now. So I think for the most part, that's where it is, of just trying to navigate these spaces and being the best version of me possible.
I love it. Now, I want to end with giving you the opportunity, JG, to ask me any question.
All right. Perfect. If you weren't in fitness, what would you be doing?
Wow. That's a great question. And it's a tough question because I don't think I've ever thought about it. Part of me, so I got into fitness because I had no idea what I wanted to do. Mm-hmm. Got my degree in psychology only because they were the classes that interested me the most. Mm-hmm. That was the only reason, but still had no idea what I wanted to do. So I kind of fell into this by accident and circumstance in a couple of ways. And so I've never thought about what else I would do.
I think you would be a good school counselor.
You think so?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, yeah. Wow. I don't know. It's interesting too, because it's one of the interesting things of, my entire adult professional career since college has been building a business. Mm-hmm. That's been my only experience. Like I worked in a commercial gym for 1 year, the first year I got into this industry, but since then it's been all on my own, building, figuring it out.
That's actually, to know like where you're headed, like for so long, that's amazing. Actually, like that's actually really amazing.
It's been an interesting ride because there's been a couple of iterations of my business and what it looked like and what the goals were. Because everywhere along, when I first started, I wanted to open a brick and mortar gym. That was anyone that was in fitness. That's what it was.
That's the goal, kind of.
And then when I was renting space out of another facility, I got to know the owner and we got to talk and hang out, and I got to see the behind the scenes of what went into that, and namely the stress that went into that. And I was like, yeah, I don't know if I want that
at all.
I'm gonna pass on all that. So then it became, okay, how do I leverage other people's facilities but still allow room for growth? And so I started partnering with different apartment complexes in the area to use their fitness center for their residents. I was their fitness provider on site. So they would basically just give me free access to the fitness facilities at their building, and the residents would pay me directly. I would charge them directly, but it allowed them to have this extra amenity that they could sell to their residents. And then, it was up to me to market it and build it, whatever. And that went well for a while until, a lot of the apartments around here are all student-based. So turnover happens every year. There's not long.
So it's like new clients every time.
So it's new clients, but more importantly, it was new demand or lack thereof, right? Some years, high demand for the programs, it'd be great. Other years, very low demand. People just weren't interested. So it was unpredictable in the worst of ways. And so then that's when that was like the second big iteration. And then it became to what it is now, which is the online space, because I wanted the freedom to be able to travel more, and I wanted to be able to still leverage other people's facilities, right? My clients, they either have a home gym or they go to somebody else's gym. So I'm still leveraging that equipment and the use of that space, but not having to be there directly. So it's been a journey. But as a result of that, I've learned so many different
aspects of it. Yeah.
Right. Like being able to sell, being able to, I did my website myself. So all of that, like I had to learn how to figure all that out and how to put that together and how it worked and how I fix it when it's broken and all that stuff. Or, just like business administration, billing, payroll, like
the whole nine.
I've learned so much that I feel like I still have no idea what I would do if I wasn't in this space, but I feel pretty confident that I have a diverse enough set of skills that I'd be able to find something that would be.
And I feel like you're like, it's easy to kind of, for me, it's always been easy to find what's next. Like, it's always been like, I never stress or get like anxious. Like, oh, like I said, like I fell into teaching. Like, I wasn't supposed to be a teacher. I mean, I was supposed to be a teacher, but like I started teaching to get off at 3:00. Like that was it. Like I knew this job would get me off at 3:00 and I could build my business after it. And it was just like the perfect job. But I fell in love with it. Like I was just like, oh, I like these kids. Like these kids are pretty cool. And like just being able to be an influence and the whole 9 on students, it's just like, man, this is great.
Yeah. You know, it would be some iteration of similar to what I'm doing now, which is helping people realize that they have more control over the experience of their life than they think that they do. Because that's what drives me in this business now, and this fitness coaching business, is the firsthand experience of being out of shape, being overweight, low self-esteem, no confidence, no future plans, to now the life that I'm living and the experiences that I've had and the confidence that I have and the skills that I've developed and just the transformation of my life as a whole and the way that I experience it is something that a lot of people don't realize can happen.
This is true.
Like it seems like a fantasy, or it seems fake, or like it's people just aren't cut out to do that. But I know, because I did it, and I know the position and the person I was when I started versus where I am now, that really anyone's capable of that. So it would have to be some iteration of helping people realize that they can do more and they can experience more.
It's almost like not a motivational coach, but just someone that people may sometimes people just need an extra push, like to know that where they are with it and how far they can go.
Yeah, absolutely. That was a good question.
Oh, listen, man, this is what I do. This is what I do.
I like it. Well, I'll tell you what, JG, thank you so much for being on the show.
Of course, man. Thank you.
Your thoughts, your experiences, your journeys. Very quickly, because tell listeners where they can find you if they want to see.
Oh, absolutely. All social media platform. Everybody loves JG because they do. For the most part, you can follow Audio Wave Network on all social media platforms. It's growing strong, and we're having fun doing it. So yeah.
I love it. My man, JG, appreciate you so much. Thanks for being.
Of course, man. Thank you. Appreciate you.
Thanks for tuning in. If you feel inspired by this story, please share it with a friend. If you'd like to book a free discovery call to talk with an A-Team coach, head to the episode description or visit us at ateamfit.com. That's ATEAMFIT.com. We'll see you again soon.